Behind the golden gates of Buckingham Palace, where every smile is scrutinized and every gesture holds meaning, a storm was brewing that would shake the very foundations of the British royal family. While the world watched through rose-colored glasses, believing in the fairy tale perfection of royal life, a different reality was unfolding behind closed doors. Princess, and known for her sharp tongue and unwavering loyalty, was about to make a decision that would either save the monarchy or tear it apart forever. As whispers of betrayal echoed through the palace corridors and family bonds threatened to snap under pressure, one woman's courage would determine the fate of the future king and queen. What happened next would prove that sometimes the most unlikely heroes emerge from the most unexpected places, and that blood may be thicker than water, but loyalty runs deeper than both. The morning mist clung to the windows of Windsor Castle like secrets refusing to be revealed. Princess Anne stood in the long walk gallery, her weathered hands clasped behind her back as she watched the groundskeepers tend to the immaculate gardens below. At 73, she had seen enough palace intrigue to fill several lifetimes, but nothing quite like what was unfolding now. The sound of hurried footsteps on marble floors broke her contemplation. Lady Sarah Chatto, her closest confidant and niece, approached with the morning papers tucked under her arm and an expression that spoke of urgent news. "And you need to see this," Sarah whispered, glancing around to ensure they were alone. The headlines screamed accusations and innuendo about William and Catherine that made Anne's jaw tighten with barely controlled anger. For weeks, the palace had been buzzing with whispered conversations that stopped abruptly when certain people entered rooms, and had noticed the change in atmosphere during family gatherings. The way some relatives would exchange meaningful glances when William spoke, or how Catherine's contributions to conversations were met with polite but cold acknowledgement. The source of the tension had become increasingly clear. Harry and Meghan's latest interviews had planted seeds of doubt about William's fitness to be king, questioning his judgment and hinting at behind-the-scenes power struggles. What made it worse was that some family members seemed to be entertaining these doubts rather than dismissing them outright, and had watched her nephew William carry the weight of his future responsibilities with grace and dignity for years. She had seen how Catherine had transformed from a shy university student into a confident future queen, earning respect through hard work rather than demanding it through title alone. The attacks on their character felt not just unfair, but dangerous to the very institution they all served. "They're trying to undermine everything William and Catherine have built," and said quietly, her voice carrying the steel that had made her the most respected and feared member of the royal family. "And some people in this family are helping them do it." The previous evening's family dinner had been the final straw, and had watched and discussed as certain relatives made subtle comments about William's decision-making, questioned Catherine's influence on royal traditions, and generally created an atmosphere of doubt about the future heir's capabilities. The queen consort had remained diplomatically silent, but her silence itself spoke volumes. Charles, consumed with his own adjustments to kingship, seemed either oblivious to the undercurrents or unwilling to address them directly. He had always tried to maintain peace at any cost, a trait and found admirable in a father, but problematic in a king. That night, Anne had made a decision that would change everything. She would not stand by and watch the monarchy be weakened from within by family members too petty or jealous to see the bigger picture. William and Catherine represented the future of the crown, and she would protect that future with everything she had. The next morning brought fresh challenges. Reports emerged of a private meeting between several senior royals where William's leadership style had been openly questioned. Sources suggested that alternative succession scenarios were being discussed, though such conversations bordered on treason when taken to their logical conclusion. Anne's phone rang constantly with calls from palace officials seeking guidance on how to handle the growing crisis. Private secretaries spoke in coded language about managing perceptions and controlling narratives, but Anne knew the truth was simpler and more dangerous than they wanted to admit. The family was eating itself alive. She remembered her mother, Queen Elizabeth II, and the quiet strength with which she had handled family crises throughout her long reign. The Queen had taught all her children that personal feelings must always come second to duty, but she had also shown them that sometimes duty required taking a stand against those who would harm the institution from within. Catherine called that afternoon, her voice strained with exhaustion. And I don't know what to do anymore. The children are starting to ask questions about why some family members seem upset with us. George heard something at school about his father being unfit and came home crying. The impact on the children crystallized Anne's resolve. This wasn't just about palace politics or adult feuds anymore. This was about protecting innocent children from the poisonous atmosphere their own family members were creating. "Catherine, dear, I need you to listen carefully," Anne said, her voice firm but compassionate. "You and William are going to face a choice very soon. You can either continue trying to make peace with people who don't want peace, or you can accept that some battles are worth fighting." That evening, Anne requested a private audience with King Charles. The conversation was difficult and emotional, with Charles defending his desire for family unity, while Anne pressed him to recognize that unity built on lies and manipulation was worthless. "Charles, you're the king now," Anne told her brother bluntly. "That means making hard decisions, even when they involve family. William is your heir, Catherine will be queen, and they deserve your complete support. If you can't give them that, then you're failing as both a king and a father." The meeting ended without resolution, but Anne could see the wheels turning in Charles's mind. He was beginning to understand that his attempts at neutrality were being interpreted as weakness, and that weakness at the top of the monarchy was a luxury they couldn't afford. As the week progressed, the attacks on William and Catherine intensified. Anonymous sources close to the palace were quoted questioning everything from William's work ethic to Catherine's commitment to royal duties. Each story seemed designed to chip away at their credibility and create doubt about their readiness for the throne, and began making discreet inquiries about the sources of these leaks. Her investigation revealed a network of disgruntled staff members, ambitious relatives, and hangers-on who saw opportunity in chaos. Some were motivated by genuine grievances, others by jealousy or the promise of financial reward for media outlets hungry for royal scandal. The most disturbing discovery was that some of the leaks were coming from within the family itself. Relatives who smiled and offered congratulations at public events were privately briefing journalists and adding fuel to the fires of controversy. One particularly damaging story suggested that Catherine was struggling with the pressure of royal life and considering stepping back from her duties. The story was completely false, but it spread quickly through social media and international news outlets, painting a picture of a future queen on the verge of breakdown. William's response to these attacks showed both his strength and his vulnerability. In public, he maintained his composure and continued his royal duties without comment. In private, and could see the toll the constant criticism was taking on him and his young family. "I never asked for this," and William confided during a late-night phone call. "I was born into it, I've trained for it my whole life, and I'm doing everything I can to serve the crown and the country. But I won't sacrifice my family's well-being for people who are more interested in tearing us down than building us up." And recognized the crossroads William was approaching. He was beginning to question whether the crown was worth the price his family was paying, and she knew that if he reached the conclusion that it wasn't, the monarchy might not survive the crisis of confidence that would follow. The solution, Anne realized, wasn't to shield William and Catherine from the attacks, but to equip them with the tools and support they needed to fight back effectively. That meant changing the dynamics within the family itself, exposing the sources of the leaks, and making it clear that attacks on the future king and queen would not be tolerated. But first she needed allies, and began reaching out to other family members who still believed in the importance of the monarchy and the legitimacy of William's claim to the throne. She found support in unexpected places and resistance from people she had trusted. The battle for the future of the royal family was about to begin, and Princess Anne was preparing for war. Princess Anne's campaign to protect William and Catherine began in the most unlikely of places, over afternoon tea with the Duchess of Gloucester. Birgit van Deurs, now in her late 70s, had spent decades observing royal family dynamics from her unique position as both an outsider who married in and a working royal who understood the pressures of duty. "And I've been watching this situation develop for months," Birgit said quietly, stirring her Earl Grey with practiced elegance. "Richard and are deeply concerned about the precedent being set. If we allow William and Catherine to be undermined like this, what message does that send about the institution itself?" The support from the Gloucesters was significant. As senior working royals who had dedicated their lives to the crown without seeking the spotlight, their endorsement carried weight with both the public and other family members. It made a mental note to leverage this support carefully. Her next conversation was more challenging. Prince Edward had always been the peacemaker among her brothers, preferring compromise to confrontation even when principles were at stake. Meeting him in his study at Bagshot Park, and found him surrounded by documents related to his Duke of Edinburgh duties, the weight of his new responsibilities evident in his tired expression. "Edward, we need to discuss what's happening with William and Catherine," and said without preamble. "Your silence is being interpreted as agreement with their critics." Edward set down his papers and looked at his sister with a mixture of frustration and sadness. "And I understand your concerns, but we can't simply declare war on everyone who questions royal decisions. The monarchy survives through adaptation, not confrontation." "Adaptation, yes," and replied sharply. "Surrender, no." There's a difference between evolving with the times and allowing destructive forces to undermine legitimate authority. The conversation revealed the fundamental divide within the family. Edward, like Charles, believed that maintaining unity required avoiding hard choices about loyalty and support, and believed that true unity could only be built on a foundation of clear principles and mutual respect. Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, joined the conversation and proved to be more aligned with Anne's thinking than her husband. "The children ask us about the stories they see online," Sophie said quietly. "They want to know why their cousins are being treated unfairly. What are we supposed to tell them? That sometimes family members hurt each other for no good reason." The impact on the next generation was becoming a crucial factor in Anne's strategy. Louise and James were old enough to understand the family dynamics, and their loyalty to William and Catherine was unwavering. They represented the future of the monarchy beyond even William's reign, and their perceptions of how the family handled crisis would shape their own approach to royal duty. Anne's investigation into the sources of negative stories about William and Catherine was yielding disturbing results. Through careful conversations with loyal staff members and trusted contacts in the media, she was building a picture of a coordinated campaign designed to undermine the future king and queen. Some of the leaks were coming from staff members who had been passed over for promotions or reassignments. Others traced back to social circles around minor royals who felt overshadowed by William and Catherine's popularity. Most concerning were the connections to international media outlets with their own agenda for covering the British royal family. The role of Harry and Meghan in this campaign was complex and troubling. While they weren't directly providing information to hostile media outlets, their public statements and interviews had created a framework that others were using to attack William and Catherine. Every criticism they had made was being amplified and expanded by people with their own grudges against the working royals. Anne's most difficult conversation came with Princess Beatrice. As one of Andrew's daughters, Beatrice had always struggled with her position in the royal hierarchy, especially as William and Catherine's family grew and pushed her further from the line of succession. The conversation took place during a charity event where Beatrice was representing the family, and it could see the tension in her niece's forced smile. "Beatrice, I need to ask you directly," and said during a private moment. "Are you or anyone close to you speaking to journalists about William and Catherine? The question hung in the air like an accusation, but a new directness was the only way to cut through the layers of palace diplomacy and get to the truth. Beatrice's response was telling, and I would never deliberately harm William or Catherine, but I won't pretend that some of their decisions haven't affected the rest of us. When they announce new initiatives or change protocols, there are consequences for everyone in the family. The conversation revealed the heart of the problem. Many family members felt that William and Catherine's modernization efforts were undermining traditional royal prerogatives and diminishing the status of minor royals. Instead of addressing these concerns directly, some had chosen to express their frustration through back-channel criticism and strategic leaks, and realized that solving the immediate crisis would require addressing these underlying grievances while making it clear that undermining the heir to the throne was unacceptable regardless of personal feelings. Her strategy began to take shape over the following days. Rather than simply defending William and Catherine reactively, she would go on the offensive by highlighting their achievements and demonstrating the consequences of family disloyalty. The first step was organizing a show of support that would be impossible to ignore, and began coordinating with loyal family members to ensure that William and Catherine's next major public appearance will be visibly supported by senior royals. The message would be clear. The family stood behind the future king and queen, and knew that public gestures alone wouldn't solve the problem. She needed to address the root causes of the family tensions and make it clear that continued attacks on William and Catherine would have serious consequences for the attackers themselves. Her opportunity came when she learned about a planned gathering of family members to discuss concerns about the direction of the monarchy. The meeting was being organized by some of the same people she suspected of feeding negative stories to the media, and she realized it represented either a chance to address the issues directly or a trap designed to create more division, and decided to attend the meeting, but not as a participant. She would go as William and Catherine's advocate, armed with evidence of the campaign against them, and prepare to demand accountability from those responsible. The meeting took place in a private room at Clarence House, officially as an informal family discussion, but practically as a trial of William and Catherine's leadership, and arrived to find several family members already present, their expressions ranging from defensive to guilty when they saw her enter. I understand there are concerns about William and Catherine that need to be discussed, and said, taking a seat at the head of the table. I'm here to listen to those concerns and to provide some context that seems to be missing from recent conversations. What followed was one of the most tense family meetings in recent royal history, and systematically addressed each criticism that had been leveled against William and Catherine, providing context and evidence that exposed the unfairness of many attacks. More importantly, she made it clear that she knew exactly where many of the leaks were coming from and that continued attacks would not be tolerated. Let me be perfectly clear, and said, her voice cutting through the uncomfortable silence. William will be king, Catherine will be queen, and anyone in this family who thinks they can undermine that reality is deluding themselves. The only question is whether you want to be part of the solution or part of the problem. The meeting ended without formal resolutions, but the message was unmistakable and had drawn a line in the sand, and family members would now have to choose which side they were on. The immediate aftermath of the meeting revealed the effectiveness of Anne's strategy. Several family members who had been quietly critical of William and Catherine suddenly became more supportive in their public statements. Media leaks about internal royal family tensions decreased significantly, suggesting that some sources had been warned off, and knew that the real test would come in the weeks ahead, as family members decided whether to honor their commitments or continue their campaign of undermining from the shadows. The battle for the soul of the royal family was far from over, and the next phase would determine whether the monarchy emerged stronger or fractured beyond repair. The first real test of Anne's ultimatum came sooner than expected. 3 days after the tense family meeting at Clarence House, a particularly vicious story appeared in a major Sunday newspaper claiming that Catherine had been difficult to work with and had unrealistic expectations of palace staff. The story quoted anonymous sources and included details that could only have come from someone with intimate knowledge of internal royal operations. Anne's investigation into the source of the leak was swift and methodical. Using her network of loyal staff members and trusted contacts, she traced the story back to its origin within hours. The trail led directly to someone she had considered an ally, Lady Louise Windsor's former nanny, who had maintained connections within the royal household and had recently been seen having lunch with a cousin whose loyalty Anne had questioned. But the more damaging revelation was that the cousin in question had been in contact with representatives of a major publishing house about a potential book deal. The attacks on William and Catherine weren't just about family grievances anymore. They'd become a business opportunity for people willing to betray royal confidences for financial gain. Anne's response was swift and devastating. She requested an immediate meeting with Charles, presenting him with evidence of the leak's source and demanding decisive action. This time, the king couldn't hide behind diplomatic neutrality or family harmony concerns. Charles, this has gone beyond family squabbles, and told her brother bluntly, "We're dealing with people who are willing to damage the monarchy for personal profit. If you don't act now, they'll interpret your inaction as permission to continue." The king's response revealed how much the situation had deteriorated. Charles admitted that he had been aware of certain tensions within the family, but had hoped they could be resolved through quiet diplomacy. Anne's evidence made it clear that quiet diplomacy was being interpreted as weakness by people who were escalating their attacks rather than moderating them. "What exactly are you proposing I do?" Charles asked, and could hear the fatigue in his voice. The weight of kingship, combined with the family crisis, was clearly taking its toll. "Cut them off," and replied without hesitation. "Anyone who is proven to be undermining William and Catherine loses their royal privileges, their allowances, and their access to family events. Make it clear that attacking the future king and queen is attacking you personally." The conversation marked a turning point in Charles's approach to the crisis. For the first time since becoming king, he was being asked to make a decision that would prioritize institutional loyalty over family harmony, and could see him struggling with the choice, but she also knew that his reign would be defined by how he handled this challenge. Meanwhile, William and Catherine were facing their own difficult decisions. The constant attacks were affecting not just their public standing, but their personal well-being and their children's sense of security. George, in particular, had become withdrawn after overhearing adults discussing his father's fitness for kingship at a social event. Catherine called in that evening, her voice strained with exhaustion and frustration. "And I need to know something honestly. Are we fighting a battle we can win, or are we just prolonging our suffering?" The question struck at the heart of Anne's concerns. If William and Catherine lost faith in their ability to serve effectively, the monarchy could face its greatest crisis since the abdication of Edward VIII. But Anne had spent too many years observing royal family dynamics to believe that surrender was the answer. "Catherine, dear, let me tell you what I've learned in 7 decades of royal life," Anne said firmly. "The people who attack you when you're struggling are the same people who will claim credit for your success when you prevail. Don't give them the satisfaction of either." Anne's next move was perhaps the most controversial of her campaign. She decided to go public with her support for William and Catherine, breaking the royal family's traditional silence about internal disputes. Her statement was carefully crafted to avoid directly naming any family members while making her position unmistakably clear. The statement, released through Anne's private office, praised William and Catherine's dedication to duty, their modernization efforts, and their commitment to preparing for future service as king and queen. More significantly, it included a pointed comment about the privilege and responsibility that comes with royal status, and the expectation that all family members would support rather than undermine the heir to the throne. The public response to Anne's statement was overwhelmingly positive. Her reputation for straight-talking and unwavering loyalty made her endorsement particularly powerful, and Media coverage focused on her role as the family's moral authority rather than any specific criticisms of other royals. But within the family, Anne's public statement created shockwaves. Several relatives interpreted it as a declaration of war, while others saw it as long overdue accountability. The divisions that had been hidden beneath polite family gatherings were now impossible to ignore. The crisis reached its climax during what should have been a routine family gathering to celebrate the Queen Consort's birthday, and arrived to find the family divided into clear factions, with some members openly refusing to interact with others who had been identified as sources of leaks or criticism. The tension was palpable as family members took their seats for the formal dinner, and observed that several cousins who had been regular attendees at family events were notably absent, having apparently decided that discretion was the better part of valor given the changed atmosphere. William and Catherine's entrance into the dining room served as a test of family loyalty, and watched carefully as each family member's greeting revealed their position in the ongoing conflict. Some offered warm congratulations on recent royal engagements, while others provided only the minimum courtesy required by protocol. The evening's most dramatic moment came during the traditional birthday toasts, when Charles rose to speak about family unity and shared commitment to royal duty, and saw her opportunity to make her position unmistakably clear. "I'd like to add my own toast," Anne said, standing before anyone could object, "to William and Catherine, who exemplify the best traditions of royal service while preparing to meet the challenges of modern monarchy. They have our complete support and loyalty as they prepare for their future responsibilities." The toast forced every person in the room to make a choice. They could raise their glasses and publicly demonstrate their support for William and Catherine, or they could remain seated and reveal their opposition, and watched as family members made their decisions, noting who enthusiastically joined the toast and who hesitated or refused to participate. The aftermath of the dinner revealed the true extent of the family's divisions. Several relatives who had been critical of William and Catherine found themselves isolated from the family's inner circle, while those who had supported Anne's position were embraced more closely by the king and the core working royals. But Anne knew that the real test would come in the following weeks, as family members decided whether to honor their public displays of loyalty or return to their private campaigns of undermining. She had succeeded in forcing the conflict into the open, but resolving it would require sustained pressure and clear consequences for continued disloyalty. The media's coverage of the birthday dinner focused on the visible unity displayed by the family, but Anne knew that experienced royal watchers would notice who had been absent and who had seemed uncomfortable during the proceedings. The message was being sent both within the family and to the broader public that the monarchy's future was secure under William and Catherine's leadership. As the evening ended, Anne felt a mixture of satisfaction and apprehension. She had succeeded in rallying support for William and Catherine and exposing their critics within the family. But she also knew that forcing people to choose sides could create lasting resentments that might damage family relationships for generations. The question now was whether the victory would be worth the cost, and whether the monarchy would emerge stronger or more fractured from this period of internal conflict. 6 months after Princess Anne's campaign began, the royal family gathered for what would become known as the Windsor Reconciliation Summit. The setting was carefully chosen, Balmoral Castle in Scotland, where Queen Elizabeth II had made some of her most important family decisions, and where the informal atmosphere might encourage honest conversation rather than diplomatic posturing. And had spent weeks preparing for this gathering, knowing that it represented either the culmination of her efforts to protect William and Catherine or the beginning of an even more serious family rift. The changes in family dynamics over the previous months had been dramatic, but she wasn't certain they were permanent. The most significant change had come from King Charles himself. The evidence Anne had presented about the campaign against William and Catherine, combined with the public relations disaster created by the family's visible divisions, had finally convinced him that strong action was necessary. His decision to temporarily suspend royal patronages and allowances for family members who continued to undermine the heir apparent had sent shockwaves through the extended royal family. "I never wanted it to come to this," Charles had confided to and during one of their private meetings. "But I'm beginning to understand that being king sometimes means making decisions that prioritize the institution over personal relationships." The effectiveness of Charles's actions became clear when several family members who had been sources of leaks and criticism suddenly requested private meetings to clarify any misunderstandings about their loyalty to William and Catherine. The financial and social consequences of being cut off from royal circles proved to be powerful motivators for behavioral change. But Anne knew that forced compliance wasn't the same as genuine reconciliation. The summit at Balmoral was designed to address the underlying grievances that had fueled the attacks on William and Catherine while establishing clear expectations for future family conduct. The first day of the summit was dedicated to what royal courtiers diplomatically called clearing the air. In practical terms, this meant allowing family members to voice their concerns about changes in royal protocols, modernization efforts, and their own roles within the monarchy's hierarchy. Princess Beatrice's contribution to this discussion was particularly revealing. "I think some of us felt that William and Catherine's popularity overshadowed our own contributions to royal duties," she admitted during one session. "It's not that we wanted them to fail, but we didn't always feel valued for our own work," and recognized this as the heart of many family conflicts. The monarchy's emphasis on the direct line of succession meant that senior royals like William and Catherine inevitably received more attention and resources than their cousins and relatives. Managing these dynamics required both sensitivity and clear boundaries. Catherine's response to these concerns demonstrated the maturity and grace that had made her such an effective royal. Rather than dismissing the complaints or defending her position, she acknowledged the challenges faced by other family members while explaining the reasoning behind recent changes in royal protocols. "I understand that modernization can feel threatening to people who have dedicated their lives to traditional ways of serving," Catherine said carefully. "But the goal isn't to diminish anyone's contributions. It's to ensure that the monarchy remains relevant and effective in the 21st century." William's approach was more direct, reflecting the leadership style that would define his eventual reign. He made it clear that attacks on his wife and children would never be tolerated, regardless of the underlying grievances that motivated them. "I'm willing to discuss any concerns about royal duties, protocols, or resource allocation," William stated firmly. "But I won't accept my family being used as scapegoats for broader frustrations with the institution." The summit's most emotional moment came when young Prince George, now old enough to understand the family tensions, asked his grandfather why some relatives seemed angry with his parents. Charles's response, delivered in front of the entire gathered family, served as both an explanation and a warning. "George, sometimes grown-ups disagree about how to do important work," Charles said gently. "But what matters most is that we all support each other and work together to serve the people who depend on us," and watched as family members absorbed this lesson about putting institutional loyalty above personal grievances. The presence of the next generation served as a powerful reminder that the consequences of family conflicts extended far beyond the adults involved. The practical outcomes of the summit were significant. New protocols were established for how family members would handle media inquiries, with all statements about royal duties being coordinated through the Central Press Office. A formal process was created for addressing grievances about royal protocols, ensuring that concerns could be raised constructively rather than through back-channel criticism. Most importantly, clear consequences were established for future breaches of family loyalty. Anyone found to be providing information to hostile media outlets or undermining senior royals would face immediate suspension of royal privileges and permanent exclusion from family events. But Anne's greatest satisfaction came from observing the changed dynamics between family members. The relatives who had chosen to support William and Catherine during the crisis found themselves with enhanced status and closer relationships with the future king and queen. Those who had opposed them discovered that their influence within royal circles had diminished significantly. The public response to the family's renewed unity was overwhelmingly positive. Opinion polls showed increased support for the monarchy, with particular approval for William and Catherine's handling of the family tensions. The crisis that had threatened to undermine their position had ultimately strengthened their standing with the British public. International coverage of the royal family's reconciliation focused on the role of strong leadership in resolving family conflicts. Anne's reputation as the family's enforcer was enhanced by her successful campaign to protect William and Catherine, establishing her as a key figure in the monarchy's future stability. 6 months later, the long-term effects of Anne's intervention were becoming clear. The royal family's public appearances demonstrated genuine unity rather than forced cooperation. Family members who had been critical of William and Catherine were now actively supporting their initiatives and speaking positively about their leadership. The children, who had suffered most during the period of family conflict, were flourishing in the improved atmosphere. George's confidence had returned, Charlotte was thriving in her royal duties, and Louis remained blissfully unaware that there had ever been any problems among the adults in his family. Catherine's evolution during this period was perhaps the most remarkable transformation. The young woman who had once struggled with the pressures of royal life had emerged as a formidable figure in her own right, capable of handling family politics with the same grace she brought to public duties. "And I can't thank you enough for what you did for us," Catherine said during a private conversation at Windsor Castle. "But more than that, you taught me how to stand up for myself and my family within this institution." Anne's response reflected her own evolution during the crisis. "Catherine, dear, I didn't save your position in this family. I simply made it impossible for people to ignore what was already obvious, that you and William represent the monarchy's future, and anyone who can't accept that reality doesn't belong in our inner circle." The final test of the family's renewed unity came during the state visit of a major world leader, when all senior royals were expected to participate in multiple public events over several days. The seamless coordination and genuine warmth displayed by family members provided clear evidence that the wounds had healed and the monarchy had emerged stronger from its period of internal conflict. As Anne watched William and Catherine confidently fulfill their roles during the state visit, she reflected on the lessons learned during the crisis. Strong institutions required people willing to fight for their principles, even when that fight created temporary discomfort or damaged relationships. The monarchy's survival depended not on avoiding conflict, but on resolving it in ways that strengthened rather than weakened the institution. Anne's campaign to protect William and Catherine had done exactly that, ensuring that the crown's future remained secure in capable hands. Looking toward the future, and felt confident that the royal family had learned valuable lessons about loyalty, accountability, and the importance of supporting rather than undermining legitimate authority. The crisis had been painful, but it had also been necessary for the monarchy's long-term health and stability. The story of Princess Anne stand for William and Catherine would become part of royal family lore, demonstrating how one person's courage and determination could change the course of institutional history. For Anne, it represented the culmination of a lifetime of service to the crown and the ultimate expression of her unwavering loyalty to the monarchy's future.